Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Webinar Wednesday. Thank you for sharing your Wednesday afternoon with us. Today's webinar is titled AGE to Post-Secondary Transition. During today's webinar, we will discuss the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, as we all know is WIOA, and how it relates to transitioning students from adult general education to post-secondary career pathways. We'll touch upon some of the expectations of legislation and discuss how to best prepare students for the academic rigor and workforce expectations students will face as they move on to college and career programs of study. This webinar, like all IPDAE webinars, are supported through funds from the Florida Department of Education. And remember, all the content can be reproduced and retransmitted and distributed for educational purposes. I'm June Rawl. With me today is Jenna Moniz. Jenna is broadcasting today from her office at Atlantic Technical College. There, she serves as the Pre-College Academic Studies Chair. We are so excited, Jenna, to have you here today and are grateful as you share your expertise with us. But before we get started, let's go over some housekeeping rules. Please note that your attendee microphones are muted. If you have a question, please type it into the Q&A section of your screen. We will monitor the questions throughout the webinar and make sure that we respond to your questions and comments. If you have technical questions or concerns, please type those in as well and we'll address them immediately. As in the past, today's webinar is being recorded like all IPDAE webinars. Look for it in the archives on the IPDAE website and give us about 48 hours after the broadcast ends. As you access materials from the webinar section of the website, be sure to visit other sections as we continue to upload new resources for you. So without hesitation, Jenna, I'm going to turn it over to you and let's get started with this webinar. Jenna?
Thanks so much, June. Welcome, everyone. On this last Wednesday of the month of January, hard to believe we're already rolling into the second month of 2018. It's kind of scary how quickly time flies. Welcome, so glad that you all are carving out a little bit of time from your very busy schedules to be here with us and talk a little bit about our new charge of getting students prepared, our students in the adult general education programs for the workforce, for post-secondary next steps. So we start off with this slide just to remind everybody where the frameworks are, where our curriculum frameworks are in the Florida Department of Education website. Everything from ABE through GED, AAAE. We know that there will be some updates to the ESOL frameworks beginning this spring, now that the new language descriptors have been released to align to the CCR standards. So we are excited about the release of those. But reminder that this is the website on the DOE frameworks where you can find your curriculum frameworks. These are kind of our guiding standards. This is what guides our curriculum, not the textbooks, not a website, the frameworks. So here's where you can find them. We like to remind folks where they are, so please do share the good news. As June shared, we're going to be talking today about WIOA Expectations for AGE programs, how we can prepare students for those post-secondary options, and student retention. How can we keep our students from slipping away from us? We know it was difficult for them to get to us in the first place in many instances. How can we promote retention and progress and completion of not only AGE programs, but also moving forward toward post-secondary programs. And we're going to talk a little bit about integrated education programs. It's very exciting. We know that you all out there are starting to do some great work with regard to integrating adult ed with the CTE program. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Excited to hear about what's going on across the state and how we can help one another to share resources so that we can make sure that we are moving forward to meet these WIOA expectations. So I won't read all of these to you. You see the slide, but the gist here is that, you know, in 2014, with the new Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, there was a stronger emphasis on career pathways. We know that career pathways is not new language for us, but just a much more stronger focus on making sure that students are transitioning, are completing AGE programs and transitioning to their next steps, whether that be at a college, a university, or a career and technical program. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. There's much more of a focus now on out-of-school youth, younger students. I don't know about you all out there, but we certainly have experienced and are experiencing a shift in the age of our students. Our students are getting younger and younger, and that tends to be the research across the board, not only in the state of Florida, but nationally. Students in adult general education are getting younger and younger. So we're seeing students from as early as 16 years to 24 years old being a heavily populated demographic within our programs. So we're certainly feeling that shift here at Atlantic Technical College and within Broward. So WIOA is responding to that shift, and there are new opportunities for younger students. Some of you may have experienced the OSY grant, the out-of-school youth grant opportunities, something to look into. But again, this emphasis is on serving younger students as our students continue to get younger. And of course, we continue to partner with Voc Rehab and Career Source, etc. So as we talk today about preparing our students for career options for their next steps, their post-secondary next steps, we have to start somewhere, right? And we know that, I know for us, for sure, many students who come in with the intent of earning their high school diploma through GED preparation, many of them do not know what they're interested in pursuing afterwards. So when we say, we'll ask a student, well, what are you going to do after you earn your diploma? Many of them will respond, well, I'm going to go to college. Okay, well, for what? What are you interested in pursuing? And it's okay. I mean, I remember being that age and not necessarily knowing and having a choice, already plotted out and planned out what career field I was going to pursue. But at this stage, we want to start to prime students and prepare them and get them thinking about what their next steps are going to be, especially since a good number of our students who come in for GED preparation, particularly students who are fresh from the high schools and have had some prerequisites, have been, are coming out of algebra classes and coming out of geometry and US history classes. A lot of that information is fresh to them. Chances are they can move through the GED tests pretty quickly. So we need to start quickly with them thinking about what happens after you've earned your diploma. What are your next steps going to be? Sometimes it's a matter of helping students to eliminate what options they know they're not interested in. We get a lot of students at Atlantic Technical College who come in and say, okay, well, I know you all focus on health. You've got a big emphasis on health. I want to be a nurse. And then when you start to talk to students about what all that entails, they go, ew, I don't like blood. I don't like the gooky stuff. So sometimes it's a matter of laying out to them what each career field looks like and using the process of elimination with them. So there are some ways that we can talk to students about what they might be interested in. But we know that time is of the essence. We know that the workforce is looking for skilled employees. I heard something on the news last night about a lot of the fields, the technical fields, not finding employees. They've got jobs available and they're looking to hire skilled workers and the employees just aren't there. So we know that this is a perfect time to get students, geared and prepped for the workforce and out into the workforce. So it's not too early, as soon as they come in, to start thinking about what they want to do next after they've completed AGE. And just as a reminder, or maybe new news to some of us out there, this is kind of a new slide. I know when I saw it a couple of weeks ago, I went, wow, look at all of the companies that are jumping onto the charge, which is great. This is a snapshot of the current companies, and there may be more by now, who are supporting GED. So these are the GED Works partners, corporate partners. So you see Walmart's there, KFC is there, Pizza Hut's there. Each of these companies will support their employees to help them earn their high school diplomas through GED preparation. So from a recruitment standpoint, a great idea to get out to some of these companies and talk to them about sending their employees your way. And from a programmatic standpoint, asking your actual students if any of them work at any of these these companies, because there may be some support for them there. In some instances, the company will not only provide funding for the student to attend the GED programs, but also family members. And again, this is in response to trying to prepare the workforce, trying to supply the workforce, rather, getting their employees ready for upward management and helping in that regard. So great information for you. Please do share this on with your students. And again, from a recruitment standpoint, start knocking on those doors. Important to know that some of these companies, I think KFC and Pizza Hut might be two of them that are franchise specific, Taco Bell as well. So, depending upon each local franchise may have, some differentiation in terms of what supports they're able to offer, but doesn't hurt to ask. Hopefully you all are aware of Florida Shines. This program was shared a couple of years ago, and not replaces, but I know that a lot of us used to use the Choices program. This program is free and available to all of us, all of our students and their family members, and is a great way for students to get in and start exploring what career options might be a good fit for them. What many of us don't know is not only can students get in here and survey what career opportunities might be a good fit for them based on their personalities, but there are lots of scholarship opportunities embedded in here too. So it's a good idea to get students enrolled. Their family members are allowed to enroll and start a password as well. They're able to enroll in the program as well, and find out what might be good career options for them, and also what scholarship opportunities might be available to them. So my, Florida Shines, and Cooter is the adult version, the version that we use for adult general education. Lots of new stuff happening inside of GED testing services. They are building out GED testing services to provide more information to students, more support, more online support to students. I know even the language is shifting a little bit to be a little bit more student-centered, a little bit more student-friendly. And one of the other things that is pretty new to GED testing services is its opportunity for career exploration. So where it says career and salary, students are able to get in there and check out what, again, do career exploration and try to find out what might be a good career fit for me, what might be a good direction for me, and where those programs located in relation to where I live, where I work. So that's in GED testing services. And I would recommend that if you haven't set up an account in GED testing services, that everybody has an account in GED testing services, so that you know how to navigate through, show students, even if you teach at the ABE level, even if you teach ESOL. If students are interested in pursuing a high school diploma, we don't want to leave it up to the GED level teachers only to share with students. We know that students, even at the ABE level, are if their intent is to work toward their high school diploma, many of them are jumping and taking the GED test. So we want to make sure that we're all aware of what's inside of GED testing services, and it changes and grows just about daily. So hopefully you've got an account in GED testing services. If not, I encourage you to do so. So what else should we consider when we're talking about our students and helping to guide them to their next steps? We know our students show up, coming from all walks of life. Again, our demographic is shifting a bit. Students may be getting younger. And we know that academics may not be the only thing on, a lot of their minds. We know that a good number of our students get to us, as a second attempt. We know that many of our students are coming to us from academic experiences that, may not have been the best academic experiences. So it really behooves us to take account for the whole person, the entire person, and what's going on in their lives, what they're coming from, what experiences they're coming from. When they walk into our classrooms, do we know what they're leaving, what situation they're leaving? A lot of our students are working through hardships, may or may not be in situations that keep them from being able to focus 100% on academics. We know just based on Maslow's, hierarchy, that if survival is the biggest and most important thing on a student's mind, it's going to be hard for them to focus. If they haven't eaten, it's going to be hard for them. If there's, difficult experiences, whether with regard to family situations, to relationships, it may not be as easy for them to focus in classes as, a student sitting next to them that, walking in from a comfy, cozy home. So it's important to take that in mind. I think so many of us are so focused on moving through our curriculum, which, is obviously critical, and moving through our curriculum quickly. But if we don't have students 100% present, then they may just be, sitting in our classrooms. We really need to carve out the time to get to know them, to get to know what's going on in their lives, to get to know their situations. We also know that many of our schools, many of our programs do not have the resources that we wish that we had. For example, we may not have social workers and counselors and lots of staff here in terms of supporting students in a wraparound kind of way. So we may need to get creative. And I know in a lot of ways I'm preaching to the choir. I think just by the nature of what we do as educators, as teachers, especially in adult ed, sometimes, we switch our teacher hat and put on our counselor hat. We know that our students connect with us quickly. We know that they probably will get into a place where, now they're in a safe learning environment and maybe connecting with you and may feel safe and comfortable with you and comfortable to share about their personal lives. So I know, my teachers and I, we talk about how we often become, unofficial counselors to students, and we take that with pride. We know that it's a real blessing that our students feel comfortable enough in our setting to be able to share with us about, what's going on in their lives. And in a lot of ways, we end up talking to them and talking through situations that might be fixable. So, we sit down, we literally make the time to sit down and talk to students about what's going on outside of school. Taking the time to talk about what's going on outside of school so that we make sure that they're in the right frame of mind mentally to be able to, to even approach the academics. Here is what that looks like in one example. So this is what we like to call our checklist to success. Every student receives one of these, and we'll talk about what's on either side of this checklist. But this is something that we physically give to every single student who arrives in the GED program anyhow. And we, kind of plot out for them what their steps are. So how TABE aligns to GED, and we get a lot of students who come here and say, but I'm here for GED, how come I landed in this class that says ABE? So it's an opportunity to explain to them how ABE leads up and through GED, and serves as kind of a checklist to them. Okay, well now I understand, I've met this requirement, now I can move on to the next requirement. We explain how reading feeds into science and social studies and what the passing scores are. We talk to them about college-ready scores and college-ready plus credit scores. And we talk about their next steps. From day one, we start to talk about, okay, well, what are your plans after you earn your diploma? And then we kind of guide them through what our steps are here on our campus. So this is a tool that, we arm each student with so that they can guide their own pathway. We tell them, listen, you're the driver here. You're in the driver's seat, and we're on the side and behind you as support. We're in the passenger seat and we're in the back seat, and you're driving, and we're here to support you in any way that we can. But you're in the lead, you're driving here. So we literally take this form and we carve out time, short amount of time regularly, that we sit with every single student and talk to them about their next steps, their academic, next steps, and also, how they're doing, what's going on with the rest, in the rest of their lives. And our teachers do this. So, we've gotten creative and said, okay, well, you know what, we've got the people here, you all, we're the teachers, we know our students best. We're not just content area teachers, we're life guides in a lot of ways. So we sit down and talk to every single student and make sure that we don't miss any steps and that they're moving forward toward their post-secondary steps. I think I've said Atlantic Technical College a couple of times. Obviously, that's where I work. We know that there are a lot of other schools out there and participants on the line who are maybe not a technical school, center, or college, but you may be connected to one, have one nearby. Just, a great opportunity for students to join the workforce in a way that is swift, efficient. Most of our technical programs last a year or so, so it's a great way for students to get into a program, a career-oriented program that is short and land students directly into the workforce, and in many cases making really, really good salaries, right away. So, we know that a bachelor's, master's degree is not going to be, the goal for every single student, but a career and technical program, may just be a great viable option. We're finding that a lot of the students who come to us for GED intent, are opened up to the world of all of the CTE, the career and technical education programs that we have available. And they go, well, how come I didn't know about this before? If I'm able to get trained or educated within a year and enter the workforce and, make a really good salary right away, it's a really good option for me. And it's a great option for a number of students. So if you are at a school that is not a technical center or college, you may want to, we should be connecting with programs, post-secondary programs that transition from AGE to post-secondary. That's, this conversation is centered around. So important for us to know, for students to know, regardless of which program they choose, whether it be at a technical college or center or at a four-year college, it's important for students to know from the very beginning when they start with you, because we've got a plan with the end in mind, they need to know when their programs of choice will start. So these are the kinds of questions that students need to be asking, that we need to help them to ask themselves from very early on. Where is this program that I'm interested in offered? Do they offer it at the technical college, technical center next to me? If not, where might I find this program of interest? Again, when does it begin? What are the requirements? Some certain programs require a high school diploma prior to starting. Some programs do not. Which will lead us into the conversation shortly about starting technical programs and our integrated model of programs prior to your high school diploma. How long do these programs last? What's the schedule? Sometimes the technical or college level programs will start much earlier than we do on the AGE side. So I know, in my example, our classes start at 8 a.m., but most of the technical programs on campus start at, 7:15, 7:30 latest. So helping our students to decide scheduling might be important, an important factor in their decision making. If they have children that they have to drop off at school and they know they're not going to be able to make it to, their class at start time, that may be a significant thing to consider. And are there additional requirements and materials? Some of the programs will require uniform, immunizations in some cases. So these are the kinds of things that they need to be asking from very, very early on.
Jenna, do you want to stop and look at some of the comments that are coming through?
Sure, thank you, June. Let's see what we have here. Okay, great comment. I think follow-up support is tremendously important. We've had AGE students enter CTE programs and struggle. Devastating when they are not successful. Not just getting them into CTE, supporting them through CTE program completion, our next challenge. What a great comment. Actually, I was having this conversation just yesterday with a couple of colleagues about how, yes, the first goal is, to get students prepped and into post-secondary programs, but once they're in, are we seeing them through completion? And it's so important and such a big part of our conversation. And as we continue on through the slides, we're going to talk about how we can prepare students for the rigor of the post-secondary programs, because it's a very different ballgame. Not only academically, with regard to academic rigor, workforce preparation. I know on our end, one of the things that we are often very honest about is, we will let students come and go. Class starts at 8 o'clock, but if they slip in at 8:15, we understand, it's not that way once they get into their college programs, their post-secondary programs, or the workforce for that matter. So part of our preparation for students is absolutely, absolutely the academics, which we'll continue to talk about as we advance, but also the soft skills, the workforce skills, being timely, coming to school as if it's coming to work, are you dressed for success? Are you ready for interviews, or are you still dressing like a high school, freshman? So very, very good point, and we're going to speak to that academic rigor very shortly. One of the other great advantages that I wanted to point out about a good number of the technical programs is the added bonus that some of the programs have college credits already built in. So a student could be enrolled in a CTE program, a technical program, and in some cases there may be an agreement aligned with the colleges or universities that will allow for articulated college credits. So it's a great, great benefit to students who are in fact thinking about continuing on to a four-year college. For example, a couple of I think our culinary program here, when a student completes the culinary program and transitions on to our local partner college, if that student articulates to that same aligned program at the college, the student starts already with over 30 college credits under his or her belt. So talk about saving time, talk about saving money, talk about starting, way ahead of the game and having a head start, in much less time and dollars. Time is money, right? And if you can think about the example of a student who may or may not be enrolled at the adult level. So say a student is enrolled in an ESOL program at the same time as he or she is enrolled in the technical program with college credits already built in. When they transition onto that college, they're almost at the point of adult general education. It's almost a triple enrollment if you think about it. If you're enrolled in GED and CTE, that CTE program has college credits built in. You transition on, you're triple enrolled, which is pretty cool. Important for students to know some of the requirements for all of the programs. This is an example of some of the TABE exit score requirements for a snapshot of the technical programs. There are a number of ways to meet your basic skills requirements. At our campus and in Broward County, TABE is, one of the most popular ways of meeting exit score requirements. So it's important that the student knows what those requirements are in advance. So you see, for example, AC is a requirement of grade point equivalency of 9 in reading, 10 in math, and 9 in language. It'll get interesting once the TABE 11-12 rolls out and we're no longer using grade level equivalencies, but are moving on to using scale scores. You will see these basic skills requirements change, not just to a grade level equivalency. We will start using scale scores with regard to TABE. And I am going to take a look at any more questions or comments that we've had come in. Would you provide some ideas or methods on how to improve literacy levels for adult students before and during enrollment in a post-secondary CTE program? Yes, absolutely. So let's get to that. First, I want to let you know about the financial aid opportunities. Critical if students are going to be applying for financial aid. We encourage all students to apply for financial aid through FAFSA. We never know what they may be eligible for. Otherwise, they're looking for other ways of funding their post-secondary programs. This is also something that we want to remind students to start right away, start as soon as possible. And there are windows of times that they need to be cognizant of. But we know that this is an area that students may have a lot of questions, may have a lot of work to do. There are lots of documents that need to be, that students will have to provide. So we want to make sure that they're starting that process early on and not leaving it to the last minute and have that be the reason that they weren't ready for their start date of their post-secondary program. We know that ability to benefit is going to be an option for us with regard to students starting a post-secondary program prior to earning their high school diplomas. We know that ability to benefit was around some years ago, and yay, it's back. This means that students will be able to start post-secondary programs and have access to Pell Grants prior to earning their high school diploma. Lots of implications here, and this kind of goes back to the question that was asked about preparing students for the post-secondary level, because not only does this mean that we will be able to enroll more students at the post-secondary level, it means that we're going to be enrolling students at the post-secondary level even less prepared than they are now. So imagine, we've got students entering technical programs, college-level programs, and they're struggling with regard to the academics. Well, now they're going to get even younger or less ready in some instances, because we're now opening up the gates for students to be able to start their program before meeting the requirements of GED, of their high school diploma. So real implications if someone could say if they weren't ready before, now we're getting students in even less academically prepared than before. So with regard to student motivation and sticking and staying, I'm going to talk really briefly about some of the things some ideas on keeping students so that we can talk about the academics, the rigor, prepping students for what we know is a huge gap and jumping up to the post-secondary level. But we know that with regard to adult ed, at the ABE level for sure, one of the biggest reasons that our completion data is, in many instances, there's a lot of work still to do. We know that a big reason for some of the gap at the ABE level, at the very least, is because students slip away from us. So we're working very hard. we want to share ideas out there. We know that some of you are doing some really great things and have some great ideas and programs in place to keep students, keep them motivated, keep them persisting. So we want to share some of the things that we do here as well. But I think, and again, back to the question that was posed, a good number of students who come in and come back to school are coming back to school because they want to better their lives, obviously. They want to move on with their lives and be able to make a good salary and not just be working a job, but be working in a career and take care of their children and their children's children. But sometimes they get into our programs and look up and realize, whoa, this is just going to take too long. Like, they don't necessarily always see the finish line, which may get them back to the place where they give up again and slip away from us. So how can we keep students here, keep them from slipping away? Because we know that a good number of students who come to us have the absolute best intent of completing the program. They wouldn't be with us if they were, if they didn't have the intent on moving forward. So what happens in between where they start to slip away? How do we lose students? So this is something that we've put in place. Again, this goes back, this is the flip side of the form that I showed you before, that progress checklist. How can we talk to students? How do we get to know students? How do we get to know what's going on in the rest of their lives outside of the academics so that we can prevent them slipping away, so that we can promote retention and progress and motivation? So teachers, our teachers, again, taking off the teacher hat and putting on the counselor hat, we each sit down with our students and we talk about, okay, well, what's going on with the rest of your lives? Obviously we go through the academics, and here are your steps to move from TAPE through GED, if that is your path, or move, from ESOL onto your technical programs, the academic side. But let's talk about, the whole you. What else is going on in your life? Why has attendance not been what it can be? Is there a scheduling issue? Is there a gap in skills and knowledge? Sometimes we find, by talking to students, we'll look up and say, oh my goodness, I didn't realize it's been this long since you've tested. It's time for you to go back and post-test. But this presents a great opportunity for us to get students supports, to get them resources if we don't have access to if the student needs help, if the student needs some support. So we will literally have the students sit down and talk to us. The student drives the process, and if there's an issue of finances or health, medical, housing issues, we see if we can't reach out and find additional resources for the students. We also, and we know that a lot of you have some great ideas. I can't wait to hear more about ideas that you all have out there for celebrating success. We have found that celebrating student success has been one of the most beneficial things that we could have put in place in terms of holding on to students, motivating them through, keeping them persisting and completing programs with us. It's amazing how just a simple recognition, a badge, stars, certificates, pictures. It's amazing how much our adult students appreciate being recognized. For a lot of them, it's the first time they've been recognized for academic excellence. So we make a big deal out of it. It's contagious. Students will often want to know, is my name on the shout out list? We will regularly shout out students who have made academic gains. They want to hear their names read. We give them, pins each time they pass a GED test. We take pictures of them and have a local ceremony once they've earned the diploma, and we just make a big deal out of them. And we know that, it spreads to other students who also want to be recognized. So I'm excited to hear ideas that you all have out there on how you celebrate students, because we know that it, has been a huge benefit for us on our end. And we know that there's the balance, to preparing students. Students not only need the academics, they need the workplace skills. They need the soft skills. We talked a little bit about not just, the academics, but being timely and being prepared and communicating, taking feedback, not always positive feedback from coworkers and employees and employers. how to resolve conflict. So there's a lot that goes along with it in terms of preparing students for post-secondary level. And our setting is a great opportunity to do both. So integrated education, and let's start to talk about the academics and preparing students for that gap and for the academic rigor that exists at the post-secondary level. When we talk about IET, or integrated education training, we're talking about students being concurrently enrolled in the AGE program as well as a technical program, a post-secondary program. So simultaneous enrollment in your ESOL classes, your ABE classes, your GED classes specifically, and a technical program or a post-secondary program. And that's where, those sections, if you're aware of the Alcate sections and the JEDI sections exist, because these are sections that we use, that we save, especially for our integrated programs. So lots of implications here, because we are talking about delivering your post-secondary program in a different way. Because like you said out there, students are coming into the post-secondary programs, and I will say it's not just our students. We get students entering post-secondary level from local traditional high schools who are also not prepared for the rigor of the post-secondary level. And that exists for a couple of reasons. First of all, when the Common Core, when they were called Common Core, when the College and Career Readiness Standards were first released, they did a wide span study of all of the literary genre, and they found that the career and technical education genre or texts were some of the most complex out there. So, that says a lot. Not only are we, expecting students to be able to read literary or read texts at a complex level, but at the most complex level. And if you think about some of the texts in the career and technical programs, it's, in some instances, it's reading manuals, and that can be very rigorous and difficult for a lot of students. So an integrated program would provide a different approach to where we are blending academics and your content at the post-secondary side. So it is teaching the vocabulary, it's teaching some of the math, it's teaching what you would be teaching at the AGE level integrated within your technical programs. Well, maybe I'll just go back here just to pause on that and talk a little bit more about what we can do on our end. I'll just say it very candidly. The first thing that we can do is stop teaching, or if we are, teach beyond what's on the test. Teach beyond tape. Teach even beyond GED. Because a student can reach the basic skills requirement on the tape test, the GED test, even ACT and SAT and AccuPlacer in some instances, because they can reach a passing score, doesn't necessarily mean that they are up to the task of the rigor at the post-secondary level. If you think of an example of ACT, for a student to meet the high school requirements of ACT with regard to reading, a student has to score, now I think it's a 19, it used to be an 18. Score 19 in order to graduate from high school. But the minimum requirement to be accepted at the college level, the university level, is a 21. So you see right there, there's a gap between completing high school and the minimum requirement to just scrape into the college level. There's a gap that's already inherently built into the curriculum. And so the intent of the college and career standards when they first were released was to close that gap. Well, we've got to close that gap very, very early on. And a lot of that means not just teaching what's on level M, level D, level A, not just teaching what's on the GED test. That means reaching into the curriculum at the upper levels, the CTE levels, the post-secondary levels, starting there and starting to expose students to the curriculum that they are going to see. So that's where the integrated programs come in. That's where our bridge programs come in. That's where our ABE, AAAE programs come in. All of our programs at the ESOL levels even should be, and that's what we'll see with the shift with regard to the standards. And that's why that slide is stuck into the beginning of the IPDAE presentations, is to remind us that we're teaching to the standards. We're not teaching to a test, and we're not teaching to a book. So we need to make sure that the rigor is high in our academic classes, in our AGE classes, in our ESOL classes, our ABE classes. One of the things that I'm excited about when the TABE 1112 is released is that we will be able to retire the TABE 910 books, which will be, just a nice pattern interrupt for us and a break, so that we can really, take an opportunity. And I know that, we're doing it already, but this will really just encourage us to make the big leap into finding curriculum outside of the test prep, outside of TABE. Here is a definition of IET. I'm not going to read it to you, but an important slide. Might want to take a screenshot or a picture of it, because this is what is required of an IET program, an integrated program. So those CCR skills that we're talking about, how do we close that gap? You see that this is, when the CCR standards were released a couple of years ago, we talked about the big shift in the standards. And a big part of that shift is students have to be exposed to complex texts. We have to bump up the rigor with regard to what students are reading. At the K-12 level, when the standards were released, you would hear the teachers saying things like, oh my gosh, this book that is now required at the kindergarten level used to be in grade 3. We're asking students to do more. We're asking students to read more. We're asking students to read more complex texts. So that's huge implications for how we teach. Obviously, with regard to GED especially, students are going to be asked to provide evidence, so everything that they write about will be based on, evidence from texts that they've read. And big one for us, building knowledge. So building that background knowledge, and again, once we identify what students are interested in, most of our texts should be informational text, real world related and career related, so that students are exposed to the vocabulary that they're going to see once they start their post-secondary programs. The bottom line is we don't have time. We don't have the luxury of time for a student to progress step by step by step through each of the levels of ESOL, ABE, GED. We've got to kind of put a faster pace on this because the workforce needs employees and the students don't have the time. A good part of the reason why students slip away from us, we think, is because they can't see the finish line. They realize it's going to be too long of a road for them. So we want to start their careers as quickly as possible. That's the shift toward IET. So how can we prepare students for that rigor? We start talking about vocabulary. We start explicitly showing them the difference between Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 vocabulary. Tier 1 being your everyday words, Tier 2 being that academic vocabulary that they're going to see across the board. We need to be talking to students daily in that vocabulary, encouraging them to use that vocabulary. And then your Tier 3 domain-specific words are going to be that vocabulary that they see specifically with regard to their field. So if they choose an automotive field, that's going to be the vocabulary that deals with automotive and cars and automobiles. So we want to recognize the difference in the different kinds of vocabulary, teach students explicitly the difference, and then expose them to it, not just through reading, but speaking, writing. We want to see them using this vocabulary. Studying Greek and Latin vocabulary, and in South Florida, there's tons of diversity. There are a lot of students that come from Greek and Latin language backgrounds. Really nice trick or cheat sheet that we like to say to our students. If students come from a background that is Spanish-speaking, Portuguese-speaking, Greek, Romanian, Italian, French, Creole, sometimes, and actually more, in many cases, over 70%, If students read vocabulary that is very, that they see at their post-secondary level, if they look at the different chunks of the word, the cognates of the word, and ask themselves if they recognize any part of that word in their first language. So just by asking themselves, do I know this word? Do I know a piece of this word in Spanish? Do I know a piece of this word in my own language? It's going to give them access to at least the gist of what that vocabulary is about. So it's a really quick trick to be able to ask students who are English learners from a Greek and Latin language background, just to ask themselves, do I recognize this word in my own language? I love, love, love this website, Quizlet.com, in terms of learning vocabulary. It's interactive. Students can add their own vocabulary words in it. It reads to them. It allows them to play games inside of it. They can develop their own flashcards. So, students are going to have to, they're going to have to know that when it comes to vocabulary, new vocabulary words, they just have to learn. There's not a lot of slipping around it. If there's a new tier 3 vocabulary that they're going to have to learn in their career fields, they're going to have to take the time and use them, practice them, play games with them, read with them. And this is a great website, a great resource. Quizlet.com, it's free, it's a lot of fun, students love it. Get them into it, have them use tier 2 and tier 3 vocabulary. We borrowed this from Miami-Dade. I know I showed this slide before, but this is another example of vocabulary activities that you can use with students to start getting them prepared. You see the website below the screenshot. Great way to get students prepared for that academically rigorous vocabulary that they're going to see at the post-secondary level. So you get the gist, exposure, exposure, exposure. This is an example of what could be math that meets, other subjects. Have students talk about math. There's no reason why we can't do this at the ABE level and at the ESOL levels, meaning, point being, we've got to kick up the rigor. We're going to see when the new ESOL standards release, we're not just talking about life skills. We're not just talking about grocery lists. We're not just talking about, survival in your day-to-day. It's going to be heavily academic. So we need to start exposing students to, to that kind of vocabulary and activities early on. And I know this may look like something that's rigorous, but you can talk about, the area of a room, have students come in and talk about designing something in your own classroom. How much paint would it cost? How much paint would we need to paint the classroom? How many people would we need in a certain amount of time? So that it's real world, it's fun, and it starts to get them thinking critically early on. This is a snapshot of an ABE standard with regard to reading complex text. So just an idea of how the rigor is being bumped up, beefed up, and we're going to see this happen with regard to ESOL very soon. So you're right when you're asking about students and students struggling when they get into the post-secondary levels. And I think it is a combination of not only prepping them way, way early on with regard to the academics, but also getting to know who they are, making sure that once we've launched them over to the post-secondary level, that we, if at all possible, have a mechanism in place to continue progress monitoring them, so that that practice that I showed you early on about making sure that students aren't slipping away, there's no reason that we can't continue that on at the post-secondary level if it is, a system that's put into place. Students need to talk to us if it starts to get difficult to them before just slipping away, and what kind of resources do we have to put in place to keep them from disappearing, from not completing programs. But the biggest thing with regard to academic preparation is starting sooner. Starting sooner, looking at the kinds of curriculum we're going to see at the post-secondary level and exposing students to it early on. We can't wait until they get to pass through all of the levels. We need to start those conversations as soon as, levels 1 and 2 and ABE classes, levels 1 and 2. So starting sooner, beefing up the rigor, and, keeping students' whole lives in mind, developing relationships with them is a start. We know you guys have great ideas out there. I'm excited to hear about some of the things that you all are doing. I'm aware of the time. And I want to make sure that we are providing enough time for anybody to ask any questions. I'm going to share with you my email address. And And before I do, I want to remind everyone that there are lots of great resources on the IPDAE website to help starting that preparation early on, to get students ready and primed and ready for the post-secondary level as soon as they start with us in our AGE programs. IPDAE is so full of great resources, and sometimes if we just take the time to get in there and check out what is available to us, you will find a plethora of ideas, resources, activities, lesson plans that you can use right away. And keep an eye out for our ongoing professional development, traveling maybe to and or close to where you are. And if you have ideas about PD, professional development, that you'd like to see come to you or shared through a webinar or lessons, do let us know. This is my contact information, email, and telephone number. Don't hesitate to reach out at any time. I'd be glad to talk more with you. And at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to June so we can talk a little bit about getting feedback.
Thank you so much, Jenna. Jenna, those checklists that you provided, that's something that other programs can take and modify to their needs. Is that true?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so we're going to get that up on the website. It's actually part of your PowerPoint. So, but if anybody would like that and they're having a problem downloading it, just give me a call and we'll send it to you individually. All right?
That sounds great.
All right. Well, thanks again, Jenna. That was really important information. But before we let you go, your feedback is so important to us and we want to hear from you. So before we close out today's webinar, we just would like to take just one more minute of your time for you to answer these 3 short survey questions. You can see them now as they appear on your screen. So go ahead and take a few minutes and give us your responses. And then we will end the poll and I'll come back to you with some last minute comments. And some questions are coming in about the PowerPoint. It will be on the IPDAE website, so you can get that there. You just go to the webinar and look for the title, AGE to Post-Secondary Transitions, and it's right there. And remember, if you ever have a problem, you can come back. You can come and contact us. All right, so the poll has now been ended. And I want to thank you for your feedback. We hope that you can join us on our next webinar scheduled for February 7th. The topic will be ESOL, listening, hitting the target using CASAS instructional resources. So we hope to see our ESOL friends and any other people who would like to join the webinar then. Until then, we wish all of you a great rest of your day and thank you for sharing your time with us.